Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Math Academy Rewind. Today we're going to be looking at multi-step equations, going back and reviewing it. There's three main types of multi-step equations we're going to talk about. Number one, we're going to deal with the distributive property. Then we're going to talk about division and how that changes things. Finally, we'll talk about some fraction problems. So let's look at the first one, using the distributive property. Remember with distributive property, we say this or read it as times the quantity of. So when we're reading this, it's negative 3 times the quantity of 1 plus 6r equals 14 minus r. We're going to start by multiplying everything inside by the outside. So everything that's inside gets multiplied by this negative 3. So we have negative 3 times 1 and negative 3 times positive 6. So we have negative 3, but since it's going to be a negative answer, it's minus 18r, and that's going to equal 14 minus r. Now we want to go in and combine our like terms. So if we look, we have a negative 18 and we have a negative r. We know that negative 18 is less than negative 1, so we're going to go ahead and move that. The inverse of subtracting 18 is adding 18. So we're going to add 18r to both sides. So when our 18r's cancel out, and on the right side we're left with 14 plus 17r. On the left side we have negative 3. We're going to now combine our constants. So we're going to take our 14 from our right side and move it to the left. Remember, our arrows need to point opposite directions. So we know that the inverse of positive 14 is negative 14. We're going to subtract 14 from both sides, and that's going to leave us with negative 17 equals 17r. Our last step is division. We're going to divide both sides by 17 to get r by itself, and negative 1 equals r. So distributive property, remember the important part up here, we're multiplying everything that's inside the parentheses by what's on the outside, then we just solve it like normal. So let's talk about what we do with division. So we have negative 8x plus 18 all divided by 6 here, and that's supposed to equal negative 5. So our first step tells us we're going to multiply both sides by the denominator, then we're going to combine like terms. So let's look at our denominator is 6. So what that's telling us is we're going to multiply both sides by 6. Now when we do this, when we multiply on the left, we're really not multiplying the numerators, we're just canceling out our denominator, which leaves us dropping everything down with negative 8x plus 18. Now on the right side, we actually do multiply this, which is going to give us a negative 30. And then from here, we would just combine like terms. So I'm going to subtract 18 over to the right side to get it over. And that leaves us with negative 48. And we have negative 8 on this side. Finally, we're going to divide everything by negative 8 to get our final answer. And that leaves us with x equals positive 6. Again, important thing to remember is when we are given that denominator, you're multiplying both sides by that denominator. It cancels out one side and gets us our multiplication on the right side. All right, guys, finally, let's look at some fractions. It's the same steps as solving like normal. So if we look at our equation on the right, we're going to start with our parentheses. As we talked about just a few slides ago, this is the distributive property. So you're going to start by multiplying, which gives us 3a minus 2. And that still equals everything on this side, 3/4 a plus 2 1/4. Okay. Now on the right side, since we have the variable a, we can't just add those two together, but it's still the same step. So we want to start combining our like terms. So let's look at our variables and our coefficients. First of all, we notice that we have a 3a, and we notice that we have a 3/4 a. We want to go ahead and combine those. 3/4 a is smaller than 3a, so we're going to be moving that to the opposite side. Since 3/4 a is positive, we're going to be subtracting 3/4 a over here to our left side, 3/4 a. So 3 minus 3/4 gives us 2 1/4. So we have 2 1/4 a minus 2 equals 2 1/4 on the right side. Now we need to go ahead and draw our arrow moving the opposite way. So negative 2 needs to move to the right, so our arrows go opposite directions. Since it's negative 2, we're going to do the inverse operation and add 2, which is going to leave us with 4 1/4 on our right side. So we have 2 1/4 a equals 4 1/4. Again, this is just like normal. So if you think about our other problems, our last step to get rid of our coefficient is division. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to divide both sides by 2 1/4. And again, we're just trying to get a by itself, and that leaves us with 1 8/9. And that's our final answer. All right, guys, this has been another edition of CMA Math Academy Rewind.